We at the Telegraph engineering, we've got quite a lot of our outreach channels, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of this. You can read blogs by our engineers, for engineers, on engineering.telegraph.co.uk. Follow us on our Twitter at TelegraphEng. If you're tweeters, please tweet using this hashtag. That'd be awesome. That's a bit about me. That's me on the weekend. And I'm head of development and technology. So I've been working in the publishing industry for about 10 plus years. Previous to Telegraph, I was at the news where I worked for the Times, the Sun, and I've done some work for Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones, and also Financial Times. So it's pretty much in the publishing industry. Right now, heading up the TC UK, telegraph.co.uk web team from an engineering and delivery point of view. And I love to fly drones. So if anybody is a drone enthusiast, come and talk to me. I've got some great story. So in this meetup, we're going to talk, there are two areas. So the first talk is, what I'm going to talk about is how we use Jenkins to for a monolith, which is what TC UK is based on. How we have transformed some of those quite inefficient practices using some of those techniques that we applied in Jenkins, and then it will be Amit over there. We'll talk about how they'll be doing Jenkins on God knows how many pipelines have we built in platforms, and how are we making Jenkins as a platform, as a service for other engineering teams to use. So. And it's a bit about Telegraph engineering. In terms of the tool set and technology, we've got almost everything, right? But more recently, from a DevOps point of view, we've doing some work with Datadog, PagerDuty, and quite a lot of new DevOps tools. So the title of my presentation is Jenkins Airways. So this is effectively a project that we ran some time ago. The idea behind that is that when we've got multiple teams working on the same code base, we have to align everybody. It's almost like a departure for a plane. So you have to let everybody know that everybody get ready to board. The flight is about to take off. So then we merge their code in, and then we take off. And if you miss that flight, then you get on the next flight, which is a release that we do once every week or once every 2 weeks. So this is the concept. So we worked on a project and we call it Jenkins Airways. So the story is that Adobe Experience Manager is a content management system that is effectively the backbone to all our media channels that are available to our consumers. So that it takes all the content that our editors are writing, transforms them, aligns them correctly, and then forwards it into the downstream channels, such as the website, as well as our Snapchat apps, and an AMP and other products. So it's quite an important software that we have, but it's a monolith. So as I was trying to explain what the monolith was, and then just before I came in here and I got into talking, somebody said, oh, this was a film back in 1980s or something. But monolith, as per the academics, is this, where lots of developers working on the same code base and potentially directly impacting each other's code. So while I'm working on one branch, I might be overwriting somebody else's code, as you guys know. So this is like an academic definition of a monolith. To me, it's the pain in my backside. It's also quite annoying, and tempting not to swear in this meetup. So just to align, so what we did was we looked at, these are our teams, and each teams are typically based on termed in a little bit of a Spotify culture of squads, and they work on their own code base. They're working on the same code base, but they're working on a different objective. So you've got someone working on mainly engagement stories. Somebody's working on registration initiative. Somebody's working on another personalization of content initiative. But ultimately, they all come together just before the release, and this is a value stream mapping, which kind of gives you an idea is what happens when all of this code merges in, and from here to there, effectively, what are those processes and steps that we take? And this is something is very repeated every 2 weeks that we do releases. A lot of that stuff is manual testing, but then things have been on top of Monolith, things have evolved. So, talking about the security, that gets bolted on top of it. Performance testing, that gets bolted on top of it. So there's lots of things that come on top of each other, and then ultimately the fact is this is a monolith, but then there's a release process, and that itself becomes quite scary itself. So combining these both areas, that is quite a lot of challenges that we face over the time. Ultimately, all of this gets into this machine, and then we publish the website or the app. So what were the real problems? Typically, the cycle time 5 days to complete one release. And when we analyzed doing this through value stream mapping, we discovered that 2.6 days, man days, are actually value-added times where things are happening, i.e., security test is running, we are doing manual regression tests and that. But there are lots of non-value-added time. What I mean by that is things that we are waiting for somebody else to finish. So it could be that we're waiting for a performance test to finish, or we are waiting for security tests to come back and all of this stuff. So ultimately, somebody submitted this, and then they're waiting for the feedback, and it depends on when they checked that forum, then they find out this. So a lot of that time is, in a lean language, is non-value added time or waste. So really, it's this value-added time that we need to work on, and all of the other stuff is generally noise and extending, and overall it's aggregating to nearly 5 days to do one release. And this bottom slide explains, you have a cross-functional team to develop a feature, then you have a cross-functional team to do a release, and that happens every week. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background to what this project is about. So what do? We thought, okay, well, we need to reduce this. This is the monolith. We're not in the continuous deployment world. We have to be quite realistic as to what we can achieve with this monolith. And we said, okay, well, let's start, take baby steps first. We will do continuous delivery, and our aim is to reduce that 2.6 days of value added time or 5 days of overall cycle time down to 8 hours. That means that we can always be in a situation where by the time all the teams have merged their code, within 8 hours, we are able to let the business or let the product manager or whoever is requesting a feature, let them know that we're ready to go within 8 hours, and we give them a branch which is all tested and is ready to release. And then the decision is up to them is when they want to go. But we are in that situation that we can actually do that within 8 hours. So that was our goal. Assemble the team. I'm a big fan of Bitmojis. Who's heard of Bitmojis? Great. Okay, it's cool, great. Just do it. Okay, this is a fun part. So we assembled the team. Right at the beginning, we started with planning it out as to what we needed to do. Then we realized actually we needed to really put targets in, because there was again a cross-functional team. So we set targets for getting developer feedback as close as possible. So we wanted to achieve that within first 20 minutes. So this will be a basic version of all the tests that we run. And that will be done on the feature branch that each team is working on. Okay, so then this thing gets merged, all of these branches gets merged into develop. Then we run a lot more heavyweight tests. That includes the standard checks on SonarQube and lightweight performance tests, and some of those newly automated tests. My presentation is gone. Great. Cool. So then ultimately we're not in a full DevOps state, because our AEM is actually managed by Adobe Managed Service. So we have to hand it over to them. So the idea is to get it to this point within 8 hours. And then at that time, when we hand it over to Adobe, and then it's up to, they've got a lead time of deployment, but we are ready. We've given it to them, tested the whole software in staging, and have handed over to them. So that's when we set up the target. So developer feedback within 15 to 20 minutes, a CI run after these code is merged into develop branch in 30 minutes, and the overnight test, which is almost creating nightly builds and run performance tests every night. Then after that, it's in staging. We'll do smoke testing on that. You're good to go. How? Of course, this is the Jenkins meetup, so this is what I'm going to talk about. So the complexity, and I was looking for a picture, is to say, okay, great, now we've got all of these things started, and we've got these targets, and we're going to do it, and we've got Bitmojis, so everything is fine. Until we lifted the hood and realized this is can of worms, or in this case, iceberg. So we only knew about this stuff, what we were doing. But when we started the project, there was lots of complication. There were like things which were done previously, and Telegraph guys will probably laugh when I hear about groovy script. I mean, that was like always like something is done, and then there are some manual cache flushing and all that stuff. So there was quite a lot of work that was emerging, almost like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this. Probably not, it's not uncommon, but it wasn't something that we anticipated right at the beginning. So we started to discover this. A lot of that work was around automating testing. And then discovering that the way some of our components were connected were actually not just part of AEM, they're connected to another third party which we were dependent on as well on the data. So it gave us the opportunity to think about how can we change our testing strategy. We were focused on the pipeline. We wanted to get code from point A to point B, but we discovered the testing was taking a lot more time, so we had to implement the strategy for stubbing some of those third-party calls that our software was making. It wasn't part of the AEM, but it was actually a third party. Cool? With me? So this is what we thought, that we're going to build a pipeline which is going to get from these stages. This was like 2 pipelines, one horizontal, one vertical. And the beauty of that, and the engineer who built it, he said there was a lot of parallel processing. So parallelly executing Jenkins job by using slaves. So then we were executing the primary jobs using the master, and then there were some slaves running Jenkins job in at the same time. So parallelizing was key, and sharing the load on multiple agents was the one of the major technique that we use. And then again, a lot of these tests, for example, the regression test. This is probably the only time I saw one of these greens, because they've been red since. There's lots of Selenium tests. So we also use Browser Stack. So if you're familiar with Browser Stack license and stuff, so what it does, it executes like 10 parallel jobs. After that, it will queue, and at a certain point the queue will fill up, and then your test will start to fail. So it was a lot of dependency on not just running Jenkins as a pipeline, but also all the third parties that we were executing our test on. And that also included security scans. So we were also dependent on their feedback into Jenkins to get a green light. So that's how our pipeline, or actually this is how our pipeline actually looks. Probably not that much different. Is that still the same? It's a lot red recently, I've noticed. I'm looking at Omar because he's most of the time fixing them. So as a key takeaway, and I thought, okay, what can I leave a message in terms of, okay, well, everything over there looks green, and we've discovered the iceberg, and we've met our goal and stuff. But there were lots of lessons learned. So tests is absolutely the key. So your pipeline is very much at the mercy of your test, and the flaky test fails your pipeline. We've put some checks, so we will, in some cases we've got the pipeline to not fail, which is a little bit like cheating, but we should not be. We should be having proper non-flaky tests over there. But the idea is to keep the tests stable and use them. And you might still have other automation tests. You can run a separate pipeline to do them. But in order for you to get into a 8 hours target, you have to continuously do that. You don't want to spend too much time looking at the test all the time. Create templates, so something that Amit is going to talk about, some of the really great practices, how we can share this monolith pipeline with rest of engineering, and also back into the community for you guys to play around with. And knowledge share. So yeah, I mean, this is probably not very uncommon, but when a build fails, it's not only one individual who should be fixing the build, but it's everyone's job to investigate what the build problem is. It is often the case sometimes whoever has implemented the pipeline, because it's got word Jenkins and the last person was implementing it, it becomes their role. So that's quite key. Talked about the build failures. And yeah, some third-party Jenkins plugins, right? So be careful. What I was getting a lot of time green, and then it was allowed is to do with a security tool. I'm not gonna use the name just in case if their Jenkins plugin was giving us a false positive. Yeah, so it was actually always saying it's green, and it was ultimately there was a problem with their Jenkins plugins. So we also need to triple check this third-party plugin just to make sure that they're not giving us a wrong information. We discovered there was a bug and they were working on it, but we didn't have the right version, and that happens to probably not uncommon. But these were the lessons that I will leave you with. Slightly cheeky. We're also hiring. So if you're interested in some of the stories or some of the technologies that I've talked about, come and work for us. We'll share the link out later. So that's me.